All right, here we are. So I'm here with my friend Rashell Jarvis of Constant Close. My name is Rilus Law. I'm an attorney, probate, and estate planning. And I was lucky enough to meet Rashell. It's been a few years now, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. It has been probably like, yeah, 3 or 4 years.
So we met in Pace's Prius days at his old office, I would say, as part of that time when he was inviting all sorts of people to show up.
Yep.
So we met that way, and that was years ago. And then now we've had the pleasure of doing some deals together. You've helped me personally with some transactions, a seller finance transaction, and I know you've helped several of my friends and other people.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to be here. It has been a while. I remember that meeting in the Prius, right? And going to see some properties and things like that was kind of like I was starting my journey into like diving deep into creative finance and learning some things. But I'm super excited to be here. I'm glad that we're doing this. I think this is going to be a lot of value for everybody and going over seller finance and kind of breaking it down. So I'm excited.
That's a topic today. We're going to talk creative finance, seller finance. One of my coaches told me I have to do 4 legal videos before I can do a real estate one. So
Oh.
I did all my legal videos, but this is both, I would say, that this comes up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
My job as a lawyer, I'm often dealing with property. So my
Mm-hmm.
specific area is when people die, right? Probate. And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes they're triggering probate because there's a house that's still in mom's name.
Mm-hmm.
And now the kids need to figure out how they can sell it or what to do with it.
Obviously that's your career and mentioning that because a lot of people, I get the question all the time, like, well, they're deceased, so we can't do anything with the property, can we? Well, actually you can. And that's where someone like you with your expertise in that type of area to where you can handle even the probate stuff during the escrow period, because a lot of times, unfortunately, you get these scenarios where as crazy as it sounds, you're like, well, my mom left me the house. Well, you're like, okay, but you need legal documentation to be able to sell the property. And sometimes wills come in. I've seen them in so many different crazy ways, like a piece of paper or a divorce decree where the divorce lawyer didn't actually file the actual correct probate documents. And it's good for people to understand is having someone like yourself as a partner in the relationship in real estate is going to be pivotal, because not only does that allow you to take over properties that need probate, and you're able to marry the creative finance with it. And there's so much opportunity there. And a neat thing about it is before I go on a tangent, is that it's a hard scenario too, because probate, I would say they're parts of your conversations, or you feel like a counselor, like I do sometimes, where it can be hard, right? The family's dealing with the death. There can be emotions. There can be a lot of things. So to be able to, and I say it this way, like pawn something off like that on you, where you know you can bring in the credibility, the expertise, and kind of instruct them and hold their hands to doing that, only builds the rapport as an investor. When you have someone like Rilus on your team, not only do you get to do these deals, but it offers credibility in your business. So that was a long answer to, can you do a deal with someone that's deceased? Absolutely. But I just wanted to dive deep a little bit on it to let people know, like, why is it so valuable? You need to have a probate person on your partner list. You absolutely need to. So
As a real estate investor, that opens up a whole new world for you, right?
yeah.
If you're familiar with probate and you know how to navigate these things.
Yeah.
I love doing deals with real estate investors. I love doing their legal work. So when I say doing deals, again, my main business is doing the legal work. If someone's in those scenarios, they can call my office. They can talk to my paralegal or my team. We're gonna ask them facts, right? We want to know exactly what's going on, right?
Of
Who are
course.
you talking to? Where's the property at? Are you talking to the daughter? Is there a will? Sometimes people will call us too soon. They don't know all these facts yet. Once they know the basic details, we can help them navigate. Let them know who's going to have to do probate or if it's required. Help them figure out how they can structure a deal where they can help take them through probate and then
Mhm.
also buy the property if that's their goal.
Could you give just a few tips? I know that process can be complex to someone like me, where it's not my area of expertise, although I understand it, obviously, because I feel like when you say that, there's going to be people out there that say, okay, so when do I send it to you? Or what do I need? So what would you tell somebody? Because people always ask me for checklists, like, what do you need before you do my deal? So I know someone's going to say, what do they need before they send it to you? What would be the best scenario?
In your world, start with the property usually, right? So an
Right.
address that we've located. I want to know who was on the deed. Have they located the deed and we know for sure, how it's titled? And then if we confirm that there's a dead person on title, we need to know if they have any estate planning documents. Is there a last will and testament? And even if there's not a last will and testament, we still want to know some family information. It's kind of like the lay of the land, right? Like maybe there's a girlfriend living in the house.
Right.
They were never married, but they're together for 40 years. But he had kids from a prior relationship. So we need to know details like that. Then we can figure out who the beneficiaries are going to be and how we can navigate the situation.
Right. That really marries a lot well with creative finance, because when people come to me about a property or a deal in the beginning, they say, okay, these are my terms. But the thing about creative finance is when I'm telling things like to some of my coaching clients or people that call me with constant close, it's really understanding this scenario to find the solution. So if you're in the creative finance world, you should be gathering that information anyway. You should know who's living in the property, who's on the deed. Finding a preliminary title report, I feel like would be beneficial not only for your process, but also for Rilus, because it'll actually show you factual who's on the deed. Because sometimes people think they are. They think because their mom said they gave them the home that they're on the deed, and they really need to know what is, on the legal binding paperwork that's with the county at that time. So with the creative type of mindset is gathering all that information, like Riley said, the lay of the land, to be able to give him what he needs to funnel through those deals as quick as possible. So I think it goes along with what we kind of teach in regards to creative finances. To find a solution, you really got to understand the problem. So the terms, of course, are important, which we'll go into as we're talking with seller finance, but knowing to give somebody a solution, you have to understand the problem. So
should we define creative finance? What is creative finance?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of definitions out there, but what I like to say is creative finance is, I love the title of it because it's exactly what it is. You can't put 2 strategies in it or 3, but it is a creative way to be able to give a solution to these different sellers or homeowners. So it has, it embodies a lot of different strategies that now are getting very complex and used together. But people that do not fit just the retail, just the traditional side, or just the cash side with the wholesale, you are able to give these homeowners or sellers or realtors these types of creative strategies to accomplish the goal. It really is something that if the traditional process isn't working, as long as you can educate the seller on this creative strategy, you can do pretty much anything on creative. Now, I'm not talking about the legal paperwork. I'm talking about the solution, right? Legal paperwork, there's some things we have to abide by, rules and regulations, but we can find a solution with the sellers through these different creative strategies. I know one thing that you mentioned, we met through Pace, and Pace says this all the time, you don't need any credit, cash, or credentials. So, and he's correct with that. And that's why creative finance draws such a crowd, because you don't have to leverage your own credit. You're able to get into these properties with buying on someone else's credit with a sub 2, but with seller finance, we're going to talk about terms, right? So terms is what we're going to talk about in regards to being able to find a solution for these people. So it's definitely an amazing way to find solutions. And, you don't need any cash, credit, or credentials, like I mentioned. So it's an awesome win-win, I feel, for the sellers and for the investor.
Creative finance, so it's just anything other than a traditional sell on the MLS with the realtor, and also a cash offer, you said, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the regular choices, right? Either you list it, you put it on the retail market, find a buyer that way, or for properties that are not in good shape, not ready for the retail market, you go straight to cash buyers.
Absolutely. So I would say it's the way that the general public has no idea about. When I talk to these sellers, they say, what do you mean you can pay on my loan? Like, is this legal? Even some attorneys, when you talk to them, when they're used to the traditional mindset. So this is why I can emphasize why paperwork is so important, because if it's not something where the general public has the knowledge, we're used to realtors, we're used to the MLS, the paperwork is the part that's really going to serve in your business as playing devil's advocate for you, because these disclosures, when it's not the knowledge of the seller, is very, very important. What Rilus does, what I do in regards to the paperwork, to say, listen, I've laid these out. I have my disclosures. I've had them sign this because worst case scenario is, as we know, the more properties we take down, the more money we make, there's going to be some point in time, something's going to come back. The seller's going to, something's going to happen with the seller. It's just the nature of the business, and the paperwork is going to protect you to make sure that you've done it the right way. So
yeah, I'm getting more and more people that reach out to me. They'll ask me about, seller finance or different deal. And they say, hey, is this legit? Can I do this? And my answer is always the same. And it's kind of a typical attorney answer, right? It's well, it depends, right? So it depends on those details. So yeah, it's possible, but the details mean everything, and how you do it, to make sure both sides are protected. So let's talk about some different options. So what's cool about this, I feel like once I got into this world, I kind of went like, regular transactions, like it opened my world up to this, like there's so many different things you can do. I guess we can talk about transactions I've been involved in personally and seeing different clients get in. But what's interesting in our market here in Phoenix, it's always a weird market, huh? We have a lot of investors that play here. And so it changes fast. At one point there was nothing on the market, things were selling faster than you can put them up. And now in certain areas, it seems like it's still like that. And in certain price points, it's still kind of that way. But let's talk about seller financing. So I feel like there's a lot of people out there that maybe they have their house listed. They saw those prices people were getting last summer and all that craziness. So they said, yeah, I want to do it, but they're a little bit behind. So by the time they got their house listed, here they are, 3-4 months later, it's still not sold. So what do they do? What are their options? One is just keep lowering the price. What options would someone have in that position, Rashell, where they're trying to sell their house, but no one's buying it?
One thing, my mind's always tapping into my realtor side and my investor side. So I want to talk about all of it because I feel like the questions that I have, other people are going to have. Okay. So it's like lowering the price, let's talk about options and lowering the price. From my realtor side and being a listing agent for a very long time, lowering the price does not serve you realtors in a buyer's market, because as a buyer, if you're lowering the price, I'm going to wait until you get your lowest price possible and I'll let it sit on the market, right? The buyers are in a little bit more control. So the thing about it is if you're a realtor, I really want to challenge you guys to learn these different strategies so you can add this to your skill set. And if you're not interested in it, at least have a partner that could give you some options as to what you can do. Now, what is their options if it is sitting on the market? So one, these are what us investors are looking for, right? The realtor can't sell it. So we're going to come in with a creative option. That option is going to depend upon all of the things that me and Rilus were talking about in the beginning, really understanding the lay of the land, what they're wanting to do. And I'll use a real life example of a property that me and my husband are potentially thinking about buying in our neighborhood. Okay. So it's a property here in Oceanside. And I think maybe I mentioned this to you, Rilus. They have it on the market. They are behind on their mortgage, which sometimes this happens in this market and sometimes it doesn't, but it's been sitting on the market for over 90 days. Okay. I talked to the realtors, gave them a call, let them know I lived in the neighborhood. And they said, hey, I heard of creative finance. I have no idea what it was, but that you could hear the desperation. Like, obviously they want to make their commissions. Obviously they want to help their client. So it was building that rapport with the realtors to be able to understand there's other options. So what it ended up happening was, tell me exactly what the sellers need. Okay, not just what their cash price is, but what are they doing? So they were a military family looking to move to Texas that needed a down payment on their property. The down payment that they needed was $50,000, and they wanted to include some of their moving expenses with it. After talking with them and getting kind of the rapport built with the realtors, we really realized they needed $20,000 after talking with them, right? It's obviously the realtors are representing them. So finding those options goes back to really being good and understanding that. So what we were able to do is to be able to buy their home on terms. Now, this one did include a subject to, and I don't want to confuse anybody, so I just want to focus on the terms part. So what does that mean? How do you find that solution? So I want you guys to think of equity a little bit different than how we were taught to think of equity. Whenever we think of equity, we think of, okay, the house, we owe 200,000 and it's worth 500. So we have that $300,000 equity. But equity can also be in interest rates and in terms. So what I mean by that is me being able to structure some terms for them while taking over their mortgage. I have equity not only in the property, but I'm taking over their mortgage at 2.75%. So that's equity and interest rates. Equity in terms is I was able to get a down payment down to
I like that. So equity and interest rates. So that's a good way of pointing out these low interest rate mortgages have value.
100%.
So like this scenario, it sounds like they have other equity too, but let's say someone has none of that other equity. Let's say they just bought their house, 500,000.
Perfect. Yeah.
And now they need to move.
Yep. That's a prime scenario because people say, how would they have a creative option? Build some equity for them. Obviously, when we're going to this investors, we're looking at the property. I'm seeing what's the ecosystem around it? What's my rental rates? Can I Airbnb it? Is the property going to increase in rental value? And we know doing inflation, rental prices continue to go up. So I'm looking at all of these things. And even though they have no equity, I could probably get into it with close to no money if I could do a subject to. But if it was someone where they didn't want to do subject to, I could do it on terms. And I could say, you know what? You don't have any equity in your property. I'm going to give you 20,000 of that up front, not up front, but I'm going to pay that 20,000 to you over 10 years. So what have I done there? I've beat out my realtor partners. I've beat out my wholesale partners because I'm not buying at a discount, nor am I charging them commissions. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not, but I'll probably pay for that. But the retail listing agents can only list at what the property is worth. I'm able to come in as a creative investor and say, I will give you some of that equity, or I will do the exchange and take over your loan and pay for your moving expenses. So that's a great scenario. And that's actually really common. I get a lot of people, Rilus, that are like, well, they don't have any equity in the property. So what can I do with it? You can tap into it,
Yeah. So as an attorney, I see clients that are trying to sell, some on like, on that side. And what I tell them is if they'll open their mind to some of these solutions where they consider, terms, and I like to call that becoming the bank, where instead of holding the deed and being the owner of the property, they'll change their position to holding a note like the bank. Or define a subject to. Explain what a subject to is. So you've mentioned that a couple of times, but what is subject to?
Subject to is the ability to have the deed transferred into the buyer's name, which means, remember, loans and deeds are different. Loans is with the bank, the deed transfers ownership, but the loan stays in place with the seller's name. That's it. That's the simplest way to understand it. Loan stays in place, but the deed transfers into the buyer's name. A lot of people say, why would anybody do that? I get that question from realtors 100% of the time. Well, generally because they have some type of pain, generally because they don't have some type of equity. And generally, there's a lot of foreclosures. There's a lot of reasons why a lot of people will do it. But sometimes when you do a subject to, you have some people that have a loan balance of 200,000 and maybe their property is worth 500,000. They want to do that exchange, but they're saying, Rashell, but why would I give up that 300,000? Why would I do that? And this is where terms come in.
This is called like a hybrid, right? So take over the mortgage.
Yep.
Take over that existing one. And then also have the seller become a bank and create a note.
Right.
And structure terms to pay for that equity. Now, I think one of the reasons people don't hear about this as much is because everyone wins except for the banks and the mortgage brokers, right?
Yeah, it's true.
And in most typical real estate transactions, that's what people know or think, right? They got to call their realtor or got to call their mortgage broker. I think that's why there's a bias towards, every time, you should, get a new loan to pay off the old loan.
Right.
But if you open your mind to these ways of thinking, it's easier to structure win-win deals where it makes sense for the seller and the buyer. So seller's putting a little bit more in their pocket and buyer is paying a little bit less.
Exactly. So just talking about seller finance, which we're kind of focusing on today, is I want to lean into what you said. You're exactly right of being the bank, right? I'm thinking of a question people ask me all the time. So why would the sellers want to be the bank? What's advantageous for them? And you guys keep in mind, banks do this all the time. We figured out how to do that. So if you've ever gotten a loan with like, Wells Fargo, Chase, Rocket Mortgage, and then you get a letter in the mail 2 months later and says, now you're paying this person. It's exactly what they're doing, is selling the notes and doing things of that sort. So just so we understand, why is it advantageous? What is a note, right?
Own a note. It's an asset when you're the
Yes.
owner, when you own the right to get paid.
Mm-hmm. You're exactly right. So that is what's advantageous to the sellers. So when they say, when I'm the bank, how does that work? You're going to add a note. Sometimes it'll be called a mortgage. Sometimes it's a deed of trust, right? It's different in all 50 states. And what happens is they become the bank and they say, this buyer has agreed to pay me this amount over these terms. Now, what happens if the buyer doesn't pay over those terms? Once again, it's advantageous for the seller because they will operate just like a bank does. They can go and foreclose on that buyer and be able to get that asset back, right? And so there's a lot of different things for sellers of why it's advantageous. And then what Riley said was so important. You have a lot of tired landlords out there that don't want to do the maintenance anymore, that own multiple properties. And you'd say, listen, based upon the numbers, we can still give you some cash flow, but we'll take that responsibility of you not having to be that landlord where you can still make some money, but we'll own the property. So there's a lot of reasons why it would interest a lot of different people. And then we could even go down the route of like capital gains, right? So if they're getting that $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 and giving that amount away to the bank, to the government, the thing about it is we get to save them that money by giving them what they need and then paying them what they want over the course of 30 years. And even if it has a balloon payment in it, right? So there's a lot of, I would say, pros on both sides. Like you said, it is a win-win. It's just educating yourself a little bit more about what terms are.
I see a lot of estate planning opportunities with it. Here's an avatar. So we've got a couple, maybe they've acquired 5 to 10 rental properties. Mm-hmm. They do it all themselves. I'll ask them, who does your taxes? I do. It's easy. Who does your property maintenance? I do. It's easy.
Yeah.
Who does your maintenance? I do. It's easy. Have you met those types?
Are they entrepreneurs? They sound like entrepreneurs.
Right. But the concern is, they want to give it to their kids and have them do the exact same thing. Yeah. So they come see me as the attorney and they say, here's my idea. I want you to create a trust where these properties go to my kids and they have to manage them the way that I did. And I asked them, I'm like, are your kids able to be a landlord? Do they have any desire? Or what's the reality once they receive these? They're probably just going to sell them.
Right.
And take all the cash at once.
Right.
And these people where they've lived a good life from the income, they're trying to show this to their kids and come up with the way that they'll do that. Mm-hmm. That's where I started considering seller finance.
Right.
As a way to, instead of just cashing out their portfolio when they retire or when they're done managing, it is a way where they can be less hands-on, where they don't have to find the tenants, but they still get income. And then if they're worried about their kids, selling the houses right away, just doing a fire sale, then if the kids receive a note, then they just have the right to get paid. So it guarantees that the kids receive an income stream.
You don't know how important this is to set things up like this. One thing about life is we never know how long we have. But one thing that I see, and I remember working on when I was in baking on the probate side, was to be able to take care of all of this before, unfortunately, those circumstances happen is everything, right? Because when people are getting back to the emotions, it's a hard thing, probate, sometimes it's an easy process and sometimes there's a lot of high emotions and grieving, all kinds of different things. There's a big spectrum of what that looks like, but what better way to take care of my children, your children, or people like that, to be able to give them that type of cash flow, and then structuring it with terms, like you said, so that they hold that note in deed of trust. To me as a parent gives me so much gratification to be able to do that. And knowing that nobody has to worry about it, right? I have all of that taken care of. So I think thinking about it too, on that side, not just the real estate and the properties and terms, it's like, I think it's something that we need to all take into consideration, especially as investors, and set it up the proper way. I think would be very beneficial to everybody involved.
Yeah, and I just want to put that out there to all those great landlords who've acquired the big portfolios, but now they're considering what's going to happen next. How is that? Are they going to be able to transition it to the next level? So there's ways they can make that easier for the next generation, more likely to get income. The property that I bought that you helped me with, that was a lady's motivation. It
Mm-hmm.
was rental property for her, but again, she was sick of being a landlord.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted to get the highest price. That's why
Mm-hmm.
it was on the market for a while and didn't sell.
Right.
So we structured a deal where she got a high price, but also where it creates the income. Because I
Mm-hmm.
know that was a big part of her motivation, where she wanted to make sure, even if she passes away, that her family will still receive income.
Yep. And what I love about that is you said highest price, right? So this is where another opportunity for seller finance comes in. So people would say, why would you pay over ARV? What is ARV? After repaired value. So this is the retail value, right? Why would you want to pay that? Well, if the number makes sense, then it makes sense, right? Generally, our game plan as investors is to hold on to this asset, right? The depreciation, the income. When we look and structure these properties, we're thinking of hanging on to them long term, building wealth, all those different things. We can give her more than the retail price as long as that number makes sense. So what comes into the pieces with seller finance, we have the cash flow number, we have the down payment, and then we have the terms. And me and Rilus talked about this. Generally when the payment goes up, the down payment goes down. When the down payment goes up, generally the monthly payments go down. They kind of fluctuate like a teeter-totter. And you were able to find a scenario with the terms that you gave them. But I just want everybody to remember that, the number that you're giving them every single month, if it makes sense, it makes sense. And we're not too worried about that purchase price number, right? Obviously, we take it into consideration. We're not offering $200,000 over retail value unless for some one-off reason it made sense. But we could definitely give her more than what her property is worth, as long as that number ended up making sense for us and what we're doing with that property.
Well, thank you. Good stuff today. Hopefully people found some value from this. Let people know where they can find you.
Yeah, so I'm on all of the channels like everybody else on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Just my name, Rashell Jarvis. I'm trying to give value like this and just explaining the strategies, working with people. I do have the TC company that I own, a Constant Close. It's just constantclose.com. The neat thing that I love about our website is we have a free consult call that you can sign up with just to kind of learn about our services and see if this is something that we can serve you. We're in all 50 states. And so you guys can find me on there and get in contact with us and my team. And you can talk to someone live on the phone. But what I'm super excited about is something that kind of me and Rilus are collaborating on is, as we had mentioned, is just being able to have, my expertise is the structuring and the paperwork and all this stuff. But with these types of deals, I would say even beyond seller finance is having someone like Rilus that can give you the expert legal knowledge, which is so valuable. And so we're going to be kind of doing some package deals or things of that sort where you can work with both of us. So if you're interested in kind of working with us together, where would they reach out for you, Rilus, in order to work with us?
Investors and sellers, if you're ready to go and on one of these transactions, I would say you can reach out to Rashell directly. Mm-hmm. But some of my clients will reach out to me, and if you want a little bit more legal advice, you can reach out to me at riluslaw.com. And then also I can help you with your estate planning needs in Arizona and California. So if you need to set up your own plan, if you're selling that way, you should definitely own that note in a trust. So it's really easy to pass it on for your family.
Well, awesome. I'm excited. I think we want to do this again, right? And just talk about some strategies and continue to give value. So I'm excited to get to hang out with you a little bit more. And thanks for having me today. It was great.
Yes, let's do it again. Thanks, Rashell.
Okay. Thanks, Rilus.